Discussion, and as we said, our focus for panel 2 is on the college admissions process, and we also want to make sure that we have a conversation about the impact that standards-based instruction and standards-based education will have on merit scholarships as well. So let me introduce to all of you the members of the second panel. All the way down to my far right is Nancy Egan. She is a Senior Associate Dean of Admissions at Providence College. Christopher Lydon is the Vice President of Enrollment Management and Marketing at Stonehill College. Amy Podbelski is the Director of Admissions at Johnson & Wales University. Jim Richardson is an Associate Director of Admission at the College of the Holy Cross. And Ann Clausen is an admission advisor at the University of Rhode Island. We want to thank you all for volunteering your time to be with us this evening. You hear me okay? I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Anyway, okay. So we want to start our discussion with panel 2 in the same way that we started with panel 1. I have an introductory question for all of you, and I would appreciate it if you would take 1 or 2 minutes to respond to this question. And it is, what impact does standards-based grading have on you in your current role in admissions? Nancy, would you like to start, please?
Good evening, everyone. Standards-based grading actually is a term that I had been introduced to a number of years ago. There were some school systems in Providence, actually, that were utilizing this concept. And it was many years ago. And there's been tremendous revisions since that time in this model. And I know that there are multiple revisions that are going to be considered. It is my responsibility to educate myself about what that means to Cumberland. So I'm looking forward to learning about that and exploring the opportunities that it will provide.
Chris.
Good evening, everyone. My answer is going to be fairly similar from that perspective. The impact in my current role is standards-based grading is another format of evaluating high school proficiency and preparation for college that we as college admission officers need to understand so that we can effectively consider applicants from those types of high schools compared to the many other grading scales we see across the country.
Amy.
Hi there. I don't mean to mirror your answers, but in admissions, specifically at Johnson & Wales University, we deal with thousands of students, literally from all over the country and all over the world. And standards-based grading is just another way in which we are able to evaluate students. We see a variety of different grading styles, again, throughout the world. And again, it's just another way for us to evaluate students for acceptance.
Jim.
Good evening. Thanks for coming. Just as my colleagues have said, I don't mean to mirror what everyone else has said, but I think what we're going to find as we go through tonight is that all of us want the same thing. Whether it was on panel 1, whether it's here in the Cumberland School District, or it's at our respective colleges, and that is to do the best thing for our children, for our students, and to place them appropriately. So when it comes to standard-based grading, at least from my perspective, I would say this is a terrific thing because it's more information for us to be able to understand, as Chris had said earlier, about what the student understands. And as a result, we can take that information and make some better decisions about how well they'll be able to handle the rigors of our own respective curriculums.
Thank you. Ann.
Yes. Thank you for having me. Can you hear me okay? Just like they have all said, You can rest assured that we will work with you, with Cumberland High School, to get a strong understanding of this new type of grading system. We get many applications from Cumberland High School. We're very familiar with the type of grading style now, and we will feel confident in learning about this new process so that your students will be appropriately placed when they apply to URI.
So, can you all talk now about the criteria that you use now to assess student performance and whether or not they would be accepted into your school? So, Nancy, if you don't mind, if you would go first, can you talk a little bit about the criteria that you use now?
As admission counselors, we are charged with shaping the entering class, and we are looking to enroll a class of students who will actually provide evidence that they will sustain their enrollment through graduation. And there's a great deal of information that we cull through on a student's application to gather that information and to make very well-informed decisions. They're difficult decisions, though, because I find that I'm continually humbled by what 17-year-olds are accomplishing now compared to what I accomplished many, many moons ago. So the information that we are looking for is at Providence College referred to as a holistic review. We are looking for evidence within the transcript that a student has followed a sequence of courses, a depth of curriculum, a level of challenge that provides evidence that they are going to be successful in our curriculum at Providence College. Balanced with that, we are looking for students who will make contributions not only in the classroom, but outside the classroom. But we want not only for them to contribute to Providence, but of course we want Providence to continue to contribute to their growth and whatever their goals are as they actually evolve through their undergraduate experience. But you will find as we go through the panel that every college and university has a unique approach and how they evaluate admission candidates based upon the goals of that institution and also relative to the educational environment of that particular college or university.
I'm going to try and make sure we don't do a lot of, as Nancy said. Stonehill's review is fairly similar to Providence's in the sense of its holistic in its approach. So I'm going to take a little different tact in answering. The review for admission at most places, unless perhaps talents like art, music, theater are involved, is at its core an academic review. So what Nancy said about quality of curriculum, depth of preparation, success and performance, those are all things that obviously are very important to us. There are schools that will factor in standardized test scores to a very large degree. There are schools that will factor them in to some degree. There are schools like at least 3 of us here that are test optional in that it is not a requirement to submit a SAT or ACT score as part of the review for admission. So we're focusing on the high school career. In my experience at my most recent 2 institutions, the strength of a student's curriculum and the performance in the classroom is the best predictor of success in our classroom. And so that drives the review from that perspective. But the holistic part really comes in understanding that all students don't get to the same point, the same finish line in the same way. Progression, seeing students who started at one level as freshmen but have matured into much more talented academic students as seniors, that progression is very important. Kids who started off great but have become less successful, have digression. You can end up with the same GPA or same scale at the end of a process, and we can like progression a lot more than digression as far as looking at an entire high school career. And when you're fortunate enough to have more applications than you have space for, beyond the academics then, the holistic review is about writing samples, it's about our essays, it's about the recommendations we get from teachers that will be increasingly important in a standards-based environment. What a teacher says about a student who he or she has had in the classroom is going to be vitally important from that perspective. And of course, extracurricular activities and other information we call from the process as well. A holistic review considers all of the factors that go into a student's application as we then go about shaping our class.
Amy.
I've worked in admissions for over 15 years, and the one question that a lot of families will bring to me is, what's the GPA requirement to get into your school? And I can't give you that answer because we don't have a specific GPA requirement. We're really looking at the entire individual. And we do it in a lot of different ways. And Johnson Wales University is a special institution. Beyond the academic performance, which is very important to us, and the level of curriculum the student completes, we're looking at a lot of different other aspects of the student's life as well that is just as important. We take references seriously, essays seriously. The type of high school the student comes from is important to us. Taking a look at their extracurricular activities, their work experience. We have culinary arts and pastry arts students to equine riding students. There's a variety of skill sets that we think is really important to the success of a Johnson & Wales student, and we take that all into consideration when evaluating a student for admission.
So I think everyone here on the panel and anyone who knows anything about college admission would agree with me when I say there's no one thing, right, that makes or breaks an application. There are so many different things that we take into consideration, and that's in effect what everyone has said so far. But you can look at a student who, and this is just from the Holy Cross perspective, you can look at two students, right, who one may have performed somewhat better than the other, at least according to the numbers. But maybe, what the teachers and the counselors and the folks who know the student the best, what they say about the student who may have performed maybe just slightly lower is that they're really engaged and they ask intellectually curious questions and they're really motivated and they're invested in their own education. This is a student that maybe we might be willing to take a chance on. It's not always. Admission is not always defined by the numbers. Often it is, but not always. So I would say, oftentimes subjective sort of feedback, as Chris was alluding to, is really important.
One of the things that we feel fortunate to be able to do at URI is to carefully look over all of our applications carefully. And just like all have said here, we are looking at all components of the application. So we're able to see the strength of the curriculum that they're taking. And I know many of you here seemed concerned about the students who are excelling in their classes, and will that be reflective on the transcript? And we will certainly be seeing that you're in honors courses or AP courses, and that will certainly give us an indicator that that your students are doing well. So strength, of course, is really something that we look at through the senior year. We do require the SATs. One of the things at URI is that we are, for certain programs, there could be certain requirements. So that's taken into consideration. But writing samples, like they have mentioned, a big part. Maybe a student didn't get an A in a class, but put forth extensive effort in their class. That will be a factor. That's something that we look at. So it allows us to sort of get to know the student as a whole and understand themselves as a learner and how well they'll do. So we are able to give that holistic review and factor in all components.
Thank you. In many of the questions that we received, there was obvious concern about moving from averages to this system of using or requiring students to meet standards in their learning. Can you talk about, a couple of you have already mentioned this, that not all schools that you work with grade the same way. Can you talk about the differences that you see, or maybe a better way to to phrase the question is, can you talk about how you level the playing field when you know that high schools are very different in the way that they assess student performance? Am I clear? Was that a clear question? Go ahead.
No.
No, there you go.
I'm certainly people will all have some thoughts on this, but at URI specifically, we do not recalculate GPAs, although I think that that's a very common thing and something that we are thinking about doing. But we see so many different types of grading scales. I feel like each year there's more and more styles of grading systems. Just when you think you have all the GPAs covered, they come up with a 20-point scale. So there's a lot out there. One of the things, as I mentioned earlier, is that we are able to get some information from the school profile, and that, as you go through this transition, that would be something, any information that you can provide for us on the profile to give us more information about what that grading scale entails, what is factored into that grading scale, really allows us to become familiar with the school. We are able to calculate GPAs all on a 4.0 scale. So depending on what the grading scale is, we can convert it into a 4.0 scale. So on that sense, it's sort of an even playing field. But getting familiar with the school and knowing their grading style, I think is a key factor in being able to sort of look at it appropriately and individually by school. If that made sense.
I would just absolutely second your contention that the profile is of paramount importance. It is the most useful resource we have in understanding how the school has defined their curriculum and at what standard the students are expected to perform. So the profile is really important. The way Holy Cross evaluates students is only within the context of the environment they've been in, and I'm sure everyone here would say the same thing. So, although you're just right across the river, we're not comparing students here at Cumberland to students over at Lincoln High School or in North Smithfield. If you are a student at North Smithfield High School, you are held to whatever standard North Smithfield High School sets and whatever kind of program is offered there and what have you, right? You're looked at within the context of the school. And so as you go through this change, we are going to come along with you, and we're gonna learn it. We're gonna look at the students from Cumberland High School within the context of Cumberland High School.
At Johnson & Wales, I think we have a pretty unique opportunity to really be exposed to a lot of different grading styles. We have a campus in Denver and Charlotte, in North Miami, and then obviously in Providence. And we are really exposed nationally to very different types of transcripts and evaluating tools that high schools use, all the way down to a portfolio schools that are being established in the Colorado area, where we have worked with the Department of Ed to establish conversions for the work that they complete in those portfolio schools. So this is nothing new to us. We also have over 850 international students on our campuses. Talk about very different grading styles. And we work very closely with those institutions to establish a really good feel for where their students are academically. The one challenge that Cumberland High School will have is, again, making sure that their profile is concise and complete and has great information that will really be allowing us to make the great decisions required in the admissions process. It's also going to be very important for guidance to understand their students. I have no qualms about calling a guidance office to ask about a student's classroom experience. And that's something, again, that Cumberland will need to be able to handle.
We're starting to range into what they said territory. From my perspective, first of all, from the standpoint of what a student can accomplish and demonstrate to us, I would say that we focus on what does your high school offer, what did you choose to take, and how did you achieve? And with the how did you achieve component, we are at the mercy of how effectively a high school provides us with how they define achievement. So we're right back to the transcript from that perspective. As a couple of examples of what we're talking about with different grading scales, I joked that last year Stonehill had applicants from almost 1,500 high schools, and I'd like to say there were 1,500 grading scales. It's not quite that, but sometimes it does seem that way. You have a traditional 4.0 scale where a valedictorian has a 4.8. Well, if the valedictorian has a 4.8, what does a 3.9 mean? There are schools that use a numeric scale, but the scale is 93 to 100 is an A, 85 to 92 is a B. No pluses, no minuses. They give numerics. When we see a 92 on that transcript, it converts to a B. Very scary to a parent who says, but it's a 92. And our response is, but the teacher knew that 92 was a B when they gave that grade. So we have to understand all of those contexts across far more examples than the two that I just gave. It starts with the profile, and it starts with our responsibility as admission professionals. The same person has read Cumberland High School for, he won't like this, but more than a quarter century. So we have a responsibility in our offices to get to know the high schools that send us particularly multiple applications. But when that new high school appears, if their transcript isn't clear, we have to go back and contact that high school so we understand. We don't make decisions in a vacuum.
We've been talking a lot about profile, and I just wanted to be certain that families here were aware of that term. When we receive applications, accompanying those transcripts are profiles that are provided by the guidance office. I actually brought a copy with me of the Cumberland profile, which I would compliment the guidance staff or whomever compiled it, because it's very comprehensive. And like Chris's colleague who's been reading applications from Cumberland for a quarter of a century, I too have had that honor. And I have seen at each institution where I have worked, and Providence is my third, variations within the grading scale that exists at Cumberland, as well as changes into the way that the courses were leveled. And so we sustain that change. Actually, I believe there's been 3 changes so far. So I'm confident that we're going to be able to educate ourselves to sustain that again. But if I receive a profile and I still have questions, having had that opportunity to see the change over continuum, again, like my colleagues have indicated, I'm going to be very comfortable calling the guidance office and asking for some clarification, because we're all here to focus on our students and to make the best informed decisions. We know, though, going into the process that there are some students who will be elated by our decisions, and sadly there will some students who will be disappointed, but we want to assure students and families that we are educating ourselves as best as possible to really look at that Cumberland achievement in the proper perspective.
I think you've answered this next question, but because it was asked several times, I want to make sure that I ask it. Will this transition to standards-based grading have a negative impact on college admissions? Anyone? Chris?
I hope it's clear that the general answer is no. Like anything else, new is something we have to figure out. But you're not the first school in the country to engage in this. And as I said, we have a lot of experience, and we know what our responsibility is to your children, to your students from that perspective, that when it comes to the questions, we need to be able to answer them thoroughly.
And Ann?
Have to just agree with what he said. I would feel confident that we will work with your community to allow your students access.
Okay. There were several questions related to merit scholarships and the impact that this may have on merit scholarships. Could you please share with us how students earn merit scholarships in your school, and do you see any negative impact on an opportunity for our students to earn a merit scholarship in your school?
Well, I guess I would sort of put the question back on you and ask, I think it would be how are grades being reported specifically. I think until we have that specific information of what we're seeing, then we don't know. I mean, as I said, I think I would assume that we will be familiar with your students and be comfortable to know which students are qualified, and that the information provided to us will allow us to determine that. So, I don't think so, but we will need to know what will be provided to us to determine scholarships, Do we know what will, I know on one of the questions it said something like a GPA will still be provided. Is that the case? We'll still be getting a GPA, okay.
Well, it seems like, just like you have different criteria for admissions, my sense is that there is different criteria for merit scholarships as well. Is that an accurate statement? Does anyone else want to comment on the impact on merit scholarships, or would you need more information, as Ann said?
Well, at Holy Cross, we don't really have merit scholarships per se. The only meritorious, truly meritorious awards we have are in the areas of classics and music. And the way the process essentially unfolds is students would apply to those scholarships separate and in addition to their admission application. And as the liaison to those two departments for those scholarships that I'm referring to, the department would tell me who has applied. I would then check that against an admission application list to make sure the student has actually applied for admission and doesn't think it's one and the same. And then I would communicate back the admission decisions to the, say, classics or music selection committee. And they are only allowed to select their scholars from the pool of admitted students. Naturally, we don't want to be awarding scholarships to students who have not been offered admission. So with that in mind, that in effect levels all of the students they're looking at, right? They know they're all admitted. Now what it comes down to for them is, what is your musical performance? What is your ability to compose music? What has been your experience in the classics? Have you taken Latin for 7 years and Greek for 4? How are you truly invested in this area? That goes beyond, I think, just a straight GPA or class rank or any other numeric sort of criteria. So for us, truly meritorious awards are pretty limited, but pretty specific at the same time.
Anyone else?
The university does offer merit awards, and primarily we're looking at the level of curriculum and the grade point average overall, which again wouldn't be an issue in this specific instance. And those are evaluated at the time of file review. So that's something that a student would be aware of very early in the admission process. Again, we have worked with other institutions out there that have, different grading scales or different levels of evaluating their students. And we have found that we haven't had any issue with merit awarding and making sure that those students do receive the awards they're entitled to based upon what they've achieved in high school.
A couple of things that I'd add. First of all, for us, the merit review also follows kind of that same holistic perspective, though much more focused on academics only. Our merit scholarships are academic merit. They're not leadership or other things. They're strictly academic scholarships from that perspective. But you're getting 5 perspectives here. There are obviously, over 3,000 colleges in the country. So to a degree, you also need to understand the "it depends" answers, because if you go to some college websites, you will see grids available. Top 10%, 3.5, 1,200 is worth $10,000. So when you see schools that have absolute categories that don't employ a holistic review, but basically say if you hit these 3 numerics, you get a scholarship, then it's important for those schools to understand if GPA is a part of it, how will they be able to place a Cumberland High School student in that context? We're back to the profile from that perspective. The profile will be used just as much from a merit review as it would be for an admission review. If the merit review has a holistic foundation, then our answers about how we select a class really play in the same way from the merit perspective.
As you can tell, there's a theme this evening in that the process of evaluating candidates is unique to each institution. There really is not a universal response that would cover certainly each institution here this evening or all the institutions that your children will identify as those that are of interest to them. So just as we are needing to educate ourselves about this new grading practice, you too will want to educate yourself about the variations in terms of review of candidates for admission, review of candidates for scholarship consideration, because it will vary from school to school, and that's going to help you feel that you have a better understanding of what the colleges and universities are looking for admission criteria and how that may differ for scholarship consideration. Now at Providence, our scholarships are also exclusively academic-based. And we'll find that the transcript at Cumberland is still going to be able to provide the information that we need in order to identify those students that are taking advantage of the greatest challenge that Cumberland can offer them, that have a curriculum of the greatest depth. Have they gone to calculus? Have they had the opportunity to go to a 4th or a 5th year of foreign language? If they haven't taken one of the core courses in the senior year because maybe they finished Spanish 4 as a junior and wanted to double up in 2 APs in history because they're interested in law, that's the type of a student who's going to continue to receive merit scholarship consideration at Providence College. I then, like all my colleagues, will look for that component as well as it complemented with those students who have exceeded the averages, of course, of whatever particular the grading scale is that is offered and have achieved at the highest level in the most rigorous curriculum available. So I'm sorry to belabor the point at Providence, but it's just an illustration of the way that we would review for merit scholarship consideration.
Thank you. There were a lot of questions related to class rank. Can you provide us with information about the current trend regarding class rank? Go ahead, Chris.
I think the current trend is that we're all experiencing a decrease in the number of schools that provide us with an actual class rank for their high school students. For Stonehill this year, between 50 and 60% of our applicants come from high schools that do not provide a class rank. It's a context that's available to us when we see it, but we certainly can't put a lot of weight into it if we don't have it available to us across the entire applicant pool. Some schools give a decile. A decile is relatively helpful because it breaks it down to some degree, but we see quartiles and quintiles. And when you break the class into 4ths or 5ths, boy, 26% and 24% really aren't different, but they're first quartile and second quartile. So it doesn't really have meaning to us from that perspective. But in general, the trend is high schools are moving away from exact class ranks.
Agree.
I mean, and perhaps you answered this, Jim, but I mean, why do you think that's the case? Why? And I read recently that 60% of the freshman class at PC are from schools that no longer use class ranks. So I'm curious as to, is it what you said, Chris, because there is such a minute difference between, the different, ranking of students? I don't know if anyone wants to build on that.
I think there are a couple of things at play. First of all, I think that you as parents often ask this question. It's one of the more common questions we get, but are students in the same high school competing against each other literally for the spaces that we have? Is there a set number of kids we're going to admit from Cumberland High School? And therefore, if we see rank, will we stop at 15% instead of 12% or 20% as far as that's concerned? So at a school that sends a lot of kids to four-year colleges, where the differences between 10% and 20% might be at tenths of a point or 1 point, but not the difference between 88 and 82, there's a concern that rank, to a degree, creates an artificial distinction between kids who are, for the most part, very, very similar. I think that's the best way I can describe why schools feel rank may disadvantage their kids in general.
Thank you. Anyone else?
It's, you know, it's absolutely the splitting of the hairs, right? I mean, just as Chris said, you know, you're talking about students who have GPAs a tenth of a point apart. Some schools have GPAs, you know, out to the 100th of a point. It's truly splitting hairs. You have students who are very much the same, who could be 10 to 15 places apart.
Thank you. I think a lot of the questions, there only are a few left, and I think, you know, they've already been answered. So I think the best thing for us to do right now is to give the audience an opportunity to ask the panel any questions that they may have about the college admissions process.
Good evening. Bear with me because I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this. The lady down from URI expressed that when you're determining the applications for our students, you take into account the context of their environment. And I would assume that you meet, I've spoken with a lot of colleges over the past couple of months, and many of them have said things like, it doesn't matter how you grade your students in Cumberland, what we need to see is where they stand among their peers. Like you said, they're not going to compare them from students from Lincoln. They'll compare them from our school profile, whether we keep them with an individual rank. Our profile shows that, you know, 20% of our students have GPAs between 3.14 and 4.0 or whatever. My concern is that with standards-based grading, and you said you could convert it to a 4.0 scale, I would like to say that I've sat in several subcommittee meetings and school committee meetings, and it's been made abundantly clear to us that a standards-based grading scale is not a 4.0 scale. And so my concern is that in Cumberland, if attaining a level 3 proficient score on all of the assessments is the main objective, and students are allowed to retest to get that 3. And you could effectively do many assignments and get graded on many assessments where you got a 94, 95, which for most of us in this room, we would think is an A. Most of you would probably consider an A. That's actually going to go as a 3 on a standards-based grade because you've met proficiency. You haven't exceeded the standard. You haven't gotten 100% of the questions correct and gone above and beyond the grade level expectation. So my fear is that we've got, 350 kids per grade, or roughly. So nobody's basically going to be allowed to get out without getting the 3s. The 4s are going to become not non-existent, but far fewer than we have. So what we'll have is this enormous lump of students with a 3. As it stands now, the administration does not plan on doing any increments in between. So you're not going to see 3.3s and 3.5s. All you're going to see is 125 kids out of the class of 2013 that have a 3. Is that going to make your jobs as admission counselors more difficult? And taking that a step further, because I do have a daughter that was just accepted to several of the schools she applied to, and she was awarded merit aid at all of them. And every single one of them used that fixed grid, GPA, SAT score, and class rank, I think. But, so I called the schools and I said, if our school was to move to standards-based grading next year, and my daughter, who has a 3.7 GPA, next year, truthfully, she probably would look like a straight 3 student. Would that have affected her merit dollars? Every single one of them said yes, because from where they stand, that 3 is going to translate as a 3.0. So do you feel that in switching to this grading system, that it's going to make it more difficult for admissions counselors and scholarship committees, and not just scholarship committees at your colleges, but the local ones like your the VAs and that kind of stuff. Is it a realistic expectation that they're going to have a full understanding of what a 3 means from Cumberland?
Specifically URI, you were asking me. I
Well,
don't
any of
kn-
you, but I know that you did say it.
Yeah.
It's so important to know where they stand within the context of their environment.
I don't know, I guess I don't know enough to say that it's safe to assume that a 3 is a 3.0. I don't know, I don't necessarily, has that been determined? Do we know that?
No, it
That
won't be. You cannot correlate a standards-based grading scale to a GPA.
Right,
They're
right.
two different
So
animals.
your concern, I guess you said something about someone saying, well, the 3.7 is going to be translated to a 3.0.
No, it'll just appear as a 3.
Okay, so I wouldn't be, I would hope that our goal is, and my goal is, because I do review Cumberland High School, is that I will have a better understanding of this new grading scale and be able to interpret what is provided for me, and be able to capture the fact that I don't know that I can say that I will be able to know she was a 3.7-ish student, but
No, you
that
would
I
never
will-
know. That's my
but I
point.
will- But by reading recommendations, by seeing her strength of schedule, by reading her essay, by seeing her standardized test scores, which we do require, it will allow me to capture her as a solid, strong student. Can I tell you right now that, she will be given a scholarship that would be equivalent to someone with a 3.7? I don't know that yet. But I hope that we will be able to take with us that she is an academically strong student who deserves to be acknowledged in a monetary way for that. I don't know that I can give you any more information than that. I don't know if class rank is going to be provided, and I know we talked about that as, something possibly going away. That's a little bit more information as far as how she compares with her classmates. Did that help you at all? As I said, our goal really is to get an understanding. The school profile will hopefully provide me with more understanding. Yep.
Can I just add?
Yep.
Can I just add to that? In the first panel, Dr. Holder, the gentleman who's the dean at Bryant, made a comment which sort of resonated with me as I was sitting where you are, and he said, well, so when a B is assigned, what does that mean, right? What does it really mean? So where it's our responsibility as admission professionals to understand what a 3 means, if that's the way it's going to go, right? So too is it incumbent on the scholarship selection committee to understand what a 3 means and where this student falls in terms of their own proficiency. So while sometimes having faith in other people to make decisions, especially financially, on your behalf is a sort of a difficult thing to do. I think when it comes to college admission and scholarship and things such as this, we all need to do that, even with our own kids who don't choose to go to our own institutions. We have to have faith in the fact that the people who are making decisions on their futures and whether or not this is an appropriate place for them, they're doing the right thing. And they take their responsibility as just that, as professionals, really seriously. We don't, as Chris said earlier, we don't make decisions in a vacuum. We don't take or make these decisions lightly. We know that there are students, there are real people behind the paperwork and behind these applications, and we do the best we can. So it's our responsibility to know what a 3 means And if we serve on a scholarship committee, we're not going to just let it go and say, well, I don't know what it means, so whatever, we're going to ignore this one. We're going to do the research, and we're going to find out what it means.
My question is almost in two parts. This has been it's unfortunate that all this had to happen for us this year. She's in 11th grade, and this is her most important year in my eyes. From kindergarten till now, she has always remained a straight A honor student. She's still doing great this year. However, one class, because of the curriculum and how it's being graded, she's in an AP class, psychology. And because the class is a little bit more difficult, she's now gone down to a C in that one class, which has now left her without being on the honor roll and changing her grade point average. My question is, should they actually go back to regular classes to maintain a higher grade point average?
Thanks, Chris. I'll defer to you, Jim. I don't need to say it. You could see me up here shaking my head. I would say no. One of the things that all of us look for in admission, regardless of how the assessment or the grade or the numeric is decided upon, one of the things that we look for in admission, which is one of our questions tonight, what are the criteria that go into admission, is to what extent has the student put themselves in a position that they're being challenged? Are they working to their level of capability and maybe a little beyond even? Are they really, truly being challenged? To drop down, if she's fully capable of being enrolled in an AP, is taking the easy way out. And that's not doing her any favors when it comes to meeting the expectation and the level of rigor at places the likes of all of ours and many others schools out there. APs are tough, but they're still the minor leagues compared to college. This is the bigs, right? And so when she gets to our classes, it's going to be even more difficult. And if she drops down, she's that much less prepared to handle what she's going to face when she gets to college. In terms of pace, rigor, level of expectation, writing, so many things go into this, and there are so many benefits to taking higher level classes. So the short answer is no.
But are they not scored on the same? She gets 5 credits to 5 credits, whether it's an AP class or a regular class? At the end of the year, it all adds up to.
Maybe I don't know enough about how it's scored. I mean, what I would say is, just without any kind of scoring being discussed, all of us are looking at the level of rigor that she's working at and what she was able to handle.
Even though you said it's better to progress, and then you get to a point where now you're in 11th grade and you just drop down?
Well, this is just it. That's not progression, that's digression.
That's right, because she now is down to a C
I think
in just that class.
I think the good for your daughter for challenging herself to take an AP course, because they are challenging. And AP courses are prescriptive. That is, every AP psychology course that is taught in America, every single student is exposed to the same curriculum, and they will take an AP psychology test in May. So it is rigorous. There is a tremendous volume of work that has to be done to learn everything that they need to learn to prepare them for that summative assessment in May. So, and that really is, that is a unique, separate, college board-driven curriculum and course. So I think what the panel is saying, that if you're, it's hard for parents whose children have consistently done exceptionally well on their report cards to see a grade like that. But and I have a senior myself who is going through this process like many of you, And what I am consistently hearing is that college admissions really look for students taking those rigorous and challenging courses. So even though your daughter's not used to getting a C, the advantages of her taking that challenging course far outweigh her dropping down and taking something easier because she's not used to getting a C.
Couple of other observations along that same line. First of all, you're probably referring to the first quarter grade, right? Because second quarter is about to end and midterms haven't even happened yet. So we don't often see quarter grades. We're going to see her performance at the end of the junior year. So as she adjusts to this course, if she also does better, talking about progression, if she does better over the course of the year, if this isn't a course that's over her head in general, but one in which she just found the transition to more challenging, we're not going to see the C. We're going to see the end product. And the end product could still be a B or a B plus, depending upon how she advances. Plus, if she takes the AP exam in May, we're also going to have the opportunity to see how she's viewed as having mastered the material by the rubric used by the College Board. 5-point grading scale on the AP exam. If she gets a 4 or 5 on the AP exam, but ended up with a B minus for the year in the course, we're back to context. We're back to the larger picture than just a singular C grade in first quarter junior year. When it comes to challenge, you all hear a lot about take challenge, take honors and AP courses. We always say appropriate challenge. It's very important that schedules not get loaded with challenge that a student's not prepared for. I don't expect every English major to be in AP calculus. I do expect students who want to major in biology and chemistry to ideally be at calculus and to have 4 years of lab science in their background. Context. Each applicant is in that context from that perspective. And as kind of a final example, take a 3.5 GPA. I know I'm using GPA, scary word tonight, but 3.5, midpoint between a B and an A. I can give you examples of students at Stonehill who were admitted, waitlisted, and denied with a 3.5 GPA. If you have Algebra 2 in the senior year, if you stop language in the sophomore year, if you take the minimum to graduate from high school and you have a 3.5, you are not going to be competitive, nor are you going to be prepared for what we expect a freshman load to be at our school. Context. And I want to stress that to the highest possible degree because our review of Cumberland applicants in the future is going to be driven by the context, what we learn from the school about the grading scale and how mastery is determined, how far students progress in a subject, and what we learn from that perspective. I'm back to nothing happens in the vacuum.
Hi, our oldest child is in 9th grade, so we have not gone through the college application process yet. My husband and I both graduated from Boston College, and I recently went online to see what they require now in admissions. They do accept over 30,000, or take in over 30,000 common applications, and they accept only a few thousand students. They do look highly at GPA, class rank, SAT scores. Now, when you're getting, I don't know how many applications you each take in, but I'm wondering, I know one of you said up there that it's your job to understand our grading scale. So our oldest, who is an A+ student, might be a 3 in this new grading system. A 3 is not a 3.0, like we've discussed. But I'm wondering, schools that take in thousands, tens of thousands of applications, are there that many admissions officers that can look down at that nitty-gritty to see that our grading scale, what it means? I mean, there's just so many applications coming in, and I'm wondering how schools will handle that with this type of grading system that isn't widely known and understood.
You might know more than me. I think it really does depend on the school that your son or daughter is applying to, and may be worth on your end to reach out to the school and find that information out. I can speak for URI and tell you that we do look into the nitty-gritty of the schools, especially if we get a lot of applications from them, and learn about their grading style. I would suspect that at Boston College, they may have seen this before, or similar types of standard-based grading scales. But I would reach out to them and find out, and in the hopes that they will be able to, as he mentioned, our goal is to know the student and be able, it is our job to find students that are good fits for our schools, students who will be successful there, and let's hope that Boston College would do that, and other schools will take that step to learn about the process. I don't know if anyone wants.
I'm going to offer you just a quick bit of College Search 101. Okay. The first thing I'll say is I commend you as two parents of a high school freshman, for already starting to think about this college search. Right. You're still just a smidge early, but not necessarily too early. This is a good thing that you're already looking at their website. You're already thinking about maybe encouraging your student to apply to Boston College and to your school. That would be terrific. When you get there, and there is probably the summer before junior year, which is still a little bit early, but to go on tours and things like that. And throughout the fall, as you get to each place, just be making contacts and ask. I mean, this is our job, is to educate you on our school and what we have to offer and what the process is and how we go about doing things. I can tell you the staff at Boston College, to a person, they are all fantastic. I know each and every one of them. I'm very close friends with many of them, and I highly respect every single one of the people that I know very well. And to a person, I would say each of them would spend as much time as you would need to understand how they go about the process. So just ask. That's what the search process is all about, is learning about your different options and figuring out how they do it, and giving them the opportunity to get to know the student.
I might also add to that, as Jim had said, it's a tremendous staff at Boston College who also support each other in the review process, as many of us do amongst our colleagues. And so if someone is to encounter a new grading scale that is unique, normally what we will do is reach out first to our colleagues on our immediate staff and ask if anybody has had this opportunity to review similar institutions, and can we have a conversation about that. So I think you do want to take a two-prong approach, and one is to make the connection and to be certain that not only Boston College, but all the colleges your child might eventually consider, is to make that connection, ask that question, but also then to trust that as professionals, we do consult amongst each other so that we can better educate ourselves as well.
Any other questions, folks? There's a question, a couple more questions. It is getting, just so that you all know, it is getting close to the time for us to end. So why don't we take two more questions and we'll call it an evening. And again, if there are questions that you have that we don't get to, please make sure that you get them to us, and we will make every attempt to answer them as quickly as possible. So two more questions.
Hi, I just wanted to ask the Stonehill or Holy Cross admissions counselor, have you received any transcripts or report cards, or for lack of a better word, from public high schools in Massachusetts that have a standards-based grading system where it's a 1, 2, 3, 4? The panelists earlier here at 6:30 had no idea if Massachusetts public schools were instituting this standards grades policy.
While Jim ponders, I have not yet seen one in Massachusetts.
And then my second question would be to Dr. Mitchell. If, I believe you had said earlier that Cumberland High School would be somehow converting this standards-based grading report card into a GPA to send to the colleges, how would that be calculated? And would the admissions officers have to have some type of documentation
accompanying that to show how you've converted a 1, 2, 3, 4 into a GPA?
We have had conversations about how we can do that, and I think we can actually provide that information to you. So, and again, I think it gets back to what these panelists have been saying all evening. It is incumbent upon on Cumberland to provide the information to the admissions office at all of the schools that our students apply to, so that they understand fully, how we calculated the GPA. So, we have worked with some models on how to make that conversion, and whatever we decide to do, we'll make sure that the colleges know exactly how we did that.
I don't want Chris thinking I'm completely avoiding the question, so I did want to just answer your question. I'm not entirely sure why your question is specific to Massachusetts.
I consider Massachusetts a pioneer as far as education. It just surprises me that no public schools in Massachusetts are instituting a standards grades policy in any of their high schools. Harvard, MIT, Northeastern, EU, BC. I'm just trying to wonder why.
Okay. Well, to be entirely forthcoming and honest with you, I don't know whether there are a lot of public schools, obviously, in the state of Massachusetts. It's a big place. So none come immediately to mind. But I will say there are schools elsewhere, or even within Massachusetts, that might be independent schools or that use alternate ways of providing us with some assessments. So we are used to doing it. We are used to calling through information and talking to guidance counselors and other school administrators to figure it out. So.
One more question.
Yeah. The previous panel had talked a lot about how standards-based grading, the whole point of it was to give more information about the students' academics. And I'm just curious, what more information are you getting from this type of grading than you would from another type of grading? Or it sounds almost like it's going to make your job a little bit harder to figure out, especially without class rank, what information comes with a student. Is there any more information that you're gaining from this?
I appreciate you thinking about our workload. Yeah. It's something that we are very comfortable in handling, and we do. And honestly, the more information I have about a student and their readiness for college, the better. I am personally, and I know our staff at Johnson & Wales has no qualms and would prefer to pick up the phone and get a guidance counselor on the phone or speak to an educator about a student's performance. And again, I think this opportunity can be something that can benefit a student. And will it take a little bit of time to kind of get our feet wet and to understand, the different pieces that are going to make up that student's transcript? Sure. But again, from our experience at Johnson & Wales, we do it all the time, and we do it with international transcripts that are completely foreign, and we're reaching out to those individuals as well. So again, I think the more information, the better.
Is this more information, is my question for you?
I think we're back to the profile.
I think that would be, we don't know yet what information we will see. I think it depends on what the transcript looks like.
And the profile is.
Right. The definition.
Well, and
of
the
the
transcript too.
The definition of the rubric has the potential to be more explicit about what goes on in a classroom than seeing English 3B currently does. We need an understanding of what defines mastery. So what is it? Does it have to do with a writing skill? Does it have to do with critical reading? So it's how this is defined what a 4 means, what a 3 means, and so on. How that's defined helps us understand the mastery, and the difference between English 3, Honors, AP helps us understand the context of the depth from that perspective.
How could you get that? Because I think the whole idea of this sounds great. I really do. And I think implemented correctly, it's awesome. I just don't understand how that information can get to you unless you're getting like a 15-page document with each application that explains the rubrics for all the standards. Do you see what I mean? Like, I don't understand what more information you're getting.
With many private schools, we do get 6, 8, and 10-page profiles with course descriptions already. I think that it's incumbent upon Cumberland to ask us what they're thinking of, to put a focus group together of college people to see how close they're coming. Let us provide some input as far as that's concerned for whatever the final product is going to be. I don't think we know enough yet about what this might look like, but we're certainly in a position to provide guidance as to what will help make this work for us. And if it turns out to be a 10-page profile, because that's what it takes, we'll read it. Right.
Talking about is, okay, there you go. But the information the other panel was talking about is also the information that students, parents, and teachers will have about the areas of strength that a student has, and also those strands and areas of deficiency that a student might have that are very specific, so they can target with very specific interventions how to remediate that issue for that student. So what the colleges will receive is a high school profile that defines our grading system, so that the panel knows. I know a few questions have come up. There still will be quality points for honors and AP level, so there will be additions in that area. We certainly need to determine whether that conversion of a 3 just comes over to 3 points in quality points. I don't think that will be the case, and we're looking at that now. So that's the type of information the college will still receive. A very good high school profile. We're really raising the level of the type of courses and challenge that students have, but you'll still see an overall mastery grade on a transcript. But if you wanted to drive down for considering so many students are getting to college that need remediation in certain English or writing or math, we could also provide report cards and other reports that show the very specific areas for improvement that those students have. So I don't know if that clarifies that.
I would just continue a thought that Chris had shared, and I think it really would be helpful if a focus group of kind of a wide range of colleges and universities could come together, not only to look at the profile, but also to look at a transcript, because I think there's some value in those of us who will be reading them on a regular basis to give some feedback that would be very helpful for administration as they come to the final product. So I'd be happy to serve if anybody's interested in having me come back.
Okay. Virgil, final comment.
Sure, and the panel was fantastic for me as well. Even though I've been doing this work for a number of years, it's always great to hear that confirmation, so I appreciate that. But just a word of advice for Cumberland, and that's really benefited my students in California and now in Maine. Oftentimes when our parents go, which has been fantastic, we heard that throughout the night, when they start speaking to colleges about standards-based grading and the system and whatnot, they try to articulate that to admissions officers as they're visiting colleges, and sometimes admissions officers' ears perk a little bit because they're not getting all of the details. And what's really helped our parents are when they actually take the school profile with them on visits. So I'd highly encourage Cumberland officials to provide that as soon as you can, and that way when parents and students are visiting, the simple thing for our parents now and students have been, is this okay? How is this looking? And every time since we've done that practice for a number of years, they've gotten the green light and the thumbs up, and the same things that I've heard tonight were confirmed on those visits. So just something that's really helped alleviate a lot of fears of our parents and our students in the past is just that simple practice of taking the school profile with you on school visits. Really has been tremendous, because admissions officers across the country like these folks here have been fantastic in really evaluating what that school profile has to say.
Thank you. Okay, everybody, please join me in thanking the Panel 2 members for being with us this evening. Thank you. Thank all of you, too, for being here. And we obviously have a lot of work to do and more questions to answer, and we will continue our work on this important issue. Thanks, and have a safe trip home, everybody.